Untitled Pitch is a monthly event, as you might know, and it's completely free for you guys, and it's completely free for the audience. What's interesting for the startups is that you get to come here and get almost a whole day of sort of special kind of torture with me. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through the 3 types of startup pitches that you need to master, because there's some sort of causality between them. Hopefully by the end of my 1 hour plus, let's say 1 hour 20, you will know enough about what the investors are expecting and what you should be expecting of yourself to put into a so-called pitch deck that you can take to an investor and present your investment case. Now, you might be wondering, because we have probably not met before, who the hell am I? My name is Vidar Andersen. I'm Norwegian national, but I've been living here in Rhineland and Cologne and Düsseldorf now for over 13 years. I'm a startup founder myself. I've been around the world pitching my own stuff. Got a lot of help, especially from American mentors on the way, and that's why I'm here, to try to help you guys also to improve your pitch game. I want you guys to be successful. I want you guys to get the prize that you want, get the deal that you want, find the investor, and be able to also convince that investor that you want to get your financing done. Also an educator, which partly, that's also why I'm here and why I'm a part of the Rhineland Pitch, together with Startplatz, because I think we have a lot of good founders around here, but we need to help them improve their pitch game so they don't get what we call an unfair deal. Because you guys are on the losing side if you don't know what the investors are talking about. So I want you guys to know more about your investment round than your investors would possibly know. And also because I need to have money coming from somewhere, I have a company that's called Plus Anderson Associates. We help some large companies around the world like Philip Morris and Telefonica and so on with finding new business models today before it's too late tomorrow. And more information about me, you can find it on vidarandersen.com. There's more information there than even my mother wants to know about me. That's my company, but that's not why we're here today. We're here today, well, hopefully I'm here today because I pitched some of these people in person, or all of these and many more in person. You might know some of these guys. There's Steve Blank, Gary Vee before he got famous, Mike Butcher. That's interesting. Anybody knows her from Shark Tank? Lori Grainer. Yeah, I pitched her also before she came on Shark Tank. I met her and pitched her as well. And I've been invited around the world, from South by to the Web to Web Summit and God knows where I've been also standing and shaking in the knees, being streamed live to millions. So, and also, of course, I've been here now with Rhineland Pitch since the beginning in 2013, which means that I have helped with Rhineland Pitch to train over 600 startups like yourself. Now, let's begin. First thing first that each founder needs to ask themselves is, are you a startup or are you a new company? Because there's a bunch of confusion, especially in Germany, about what the hell a startup actually is. Many people confuses Existenzgründung with startups. Now, I'm not saying that one class of new company is better than the other, because I love both. I'm just saying there are certain types of credit and financing classes available to one and not to the other type of company. That is to say, if you're a startup, you cannot go to a bank. One definition I use is, if you can go to a bank and they will give you a loan, you're not a startup. Not in a mile, you're a startup. If you're a startup, you'll be laughed out of the bank because there's nothing there that they can give you a loan on. Now, if you want to be sort of academic, there's also a definition. You can say a startup is a temporary organization that is in search of a scalable and repeatable business model, and it's operating in an environment of extreme uncertainty. Temporary? Why? We don't want to be a startup forever because it fucking sucks. I'm sorry, it's not cool at all. You don't know what you're going to be doing next day. You have no idea if you're going to be surviving in the next 6 months. And most of the time, you have no revenue to speak of. So it's not cool. We want to become a company that scales, but we also know that this can take maybe 5 to 10 years of hard, dirty work. Now, searchable, so it's searching for a scalable and repeatable business model. Scalable, right? Not a repeatable one that doesn't scale, because a startup is searching for hyper growth. Now, that's also meaning because we're searching, we are operating in an environment of extreme uncertainty. That means that what we did last week is probably not what we're doing today, and we have no idea what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Now, a company, or what we call also in Germany an Existenzgründung, it's more or less a permanent form of organization because it's sorted. Maybe it's been around for 100 years, 100, 200, 400. A baker, a service provider, an agency, a kiosk. So it's a permanent organization that's designed to execute a proven, repeatable, and sometimes scalable business model in a predictable and stable environment. So what I'm basically saying is that I don't think one is better than the other. I'm just saying that everything I'm going to be talking about today only applies to startups, because the credit class or financing class that we call VC or venture capital or business angel are not necessarily, at least exclusively VCs will not be able to invest in a service provider model which will scale with human capital, for instance. They're looking for something that has more hypergrowth, more digital components, less cost to scaling, more return on their investment. Now, also, for instance, on the other hand, a startup will not be able to get a credit, like we talked about going get a loan at a bank. So you just have to ask yourself, are you a startup or a company? Because everything I'm going to be talking about today is more or less only related to a startup. So there's another thing we need to talk about, especially in Germany, before we continue, and that is that investors do not exist to give you permission to start anything. That is to say, a lot of people, especially first-time founders, especially out of school, think that, oh, so all I need is an investor. The investor will somehow make everything great again. I don't know why this actually is a mindset. I blame school. I blame all sorts of TV shows that have this sort of image that you have to go and beg for money to somehow be successful. But of course, an investor cannot make gold if you have crap. You know, shit in, shit out. If your shit stinks, no investor in the world is going to make it good. Now also, if you have a crap team, they're not going to be able to finance you. They're not going to make sort of those magical silhouettes that you have in your pitch deck where you say, well, I need a technical co-founder and I need a business partner. They're not going to go there and say, fill those automatically for you. They're not going to work as a HR department for you and fill out your team. You need to come with a complete team to the investor. And also, of course, if your idea is crap, they can't help you. They're not going to make it better. And also, as we know, there's never been more capital available to the asset class of startups ever before. There's a massive amount of money available for startups today. But on the other hand, it's never been cheaper to make a startup. All you need is access to Wi-Fi and a second-hand laptop, and you can build the next Facebook. So you have a crap load of more competition today than you ever had. And also the reality looks like this. Anybody knows this? Dilbert? One of the most syndicated cartoons in the world. So the evil boss comes to the colleague here and says, I have a great idea for a startup company. All I need is a seed investor and an engineer to do all the work. And then the colleague says, which is correct, I believe the economic term for what you have is nothing. You don't have a team that can do the job, and you don't, if you're depending on an investor to get anything done, you have nothing. And this is, of course, also the attitude for most, if not all, professional startup investors, because they see 1,000 other startups that has something and have done something and maybe has a team, at least has a team that's ready to do some stuff. If you don't have a team and you cannot do anything without getting money from an investor, cannot move anything in the world without money, you're shit out of luck. Of course, there's also the other way of looking at this. Because there is so much money, you will find a bag of money with your name on it somewhere if you keep on looking, but that money is not necessarily coming from a person or an institution that you want to take the money from, or at a deal that you will be able to live with. Now also, just bear in mind, an investment is a first next step after you've done some interesting stuff on your own, right? Going to an investor with an idea can be fine if your name is Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. If you've done this 10 times before, maybe they don't need to see so much because you already have so many successes. But if you haven't got any successes behind your belt, be ready to show something, a prototype, an MVP, some traction, whatever. And also bear in mind, investors are commodities, you're the prize. You know, good teams with great ideas are really rare. It's super easy to get money today because there's just so much floating about. So the investors are commodities, so we need to stop to suck up to investors. And of course, large warning because we are at one right now, starter pitch competitions are success theater bullshit. Why? Because they don't usually move any of your important metrics. If we're a startup, what are we going to be worried about? Revenue, growth, exit, all that matters. Winning a competition feels good for your ego. It's nice to show your mom, but it's bullshit for business. It takes so much resources out of you and your company instead of moving the metrics that matters in your company. But of course, where else are you going to get to training so you're not jello in the knees when you're standing there in the boardroom with the investor? How are you going to be confident if you haven't done this before? So that's why we're here. We're here to make you fit. We're here to make you practice. We're here to give you feedback and hopefully to make your pitch stronger. So pitch competitions are just fine if you don't mistake them for the real thing. If you can use them for whatever it is that you want to use them for, get attention, get practice, get publicity, that's fine. Just don't think that this is how you raise money. All right. Now let's move on. So if you want to raise money, there's a great post from the founder of Y Combinator, the most successful and first startup accelerator in Silicon Valley. You can get this presentation online, so you don't have to make too many notes. What is important here is that he just have an essay where there's like all the things you need to consider is just in one place. It's a great read. And also, we also like to complain a lot in Europe, right? Oh, it's so hard to get money. In the US is so much easier. Don't know if we can read this. I guess we can make it sharper. There we go. So yeah, it is a bit harder to raise your second round. You see here in Germany, we're at 54% chance to raise your second round, whereas in Silicon Valley, we're at 63. It's a little bit higher. But looking here, raising your third round, we're starting to equal out. So we're going down here. Right? If you're going to be really successful and raise the sixth round, we're on par with Silicon Valley. So even in Silicon Valley, it gets harder and harder to raise every single time.
But the sixth round example now doesn't mean the rest failed. It just means that the company could have been successful.
Yeah, but an investor doesn't really care, and VC doesn't care about you breaking even. They care about getting 10x the revenue. That means an exit. That means that you either get sold or you go public. Or you go bankrupt so they can write it off. Right? They don't care about you getting break even. Break even is nothing for them. It doesn't bring them any money. So what that means is, I also wanted to tell you guys, once you've taken money from a VC, and maybe we should talk about the difference between a VC and a business angel. Anybody know the difference between a VC and a business angel? Yeah?
Business angel is mostly a private person that has some extra money and some experience, some are very unexperienced, but they basically give their personal money to a project. VC, they want a return on investment. They want it's a bigger company, more money. VCs come in later.
It was all good in the beginning, then it sort of went backwards. So yeah, an angel per definition is always a private person that's investing their own money because they have inherited money or they were founders themselves and had an exit, whatever. They're investing their own money, which usually means that they are not investing too much money because when they lose them, they can feel it. And also, because they want to spread it around, they spread it in smaller tickets. Tickets is just another word for checks. Checks is just another word for how much money they give to different kinds of startups. Now, on the other hand, a VC is per definition always a professional that is not investing their own money. They're glorified funds managers. They're taking our pension fund money, or a combination of a lot of different sources. They call it LPs, that put monies into large funds. And also, it's not entirely correct that VCs usually go in, or all VCs go in later. That's just a sort of a side effect of them having larger sums that they need to put in larger. They have to put larger sums into startups to get more on the return, which means that they want to have more safety. There are VCs who have seed, pre-seed funds. There's not a rule that the VCs are not early on. But on the other hand, the angel is always early on, because if not, they cannot afford to participate in your investment. And also, that's the only way they can actually have a great return on a small investment. All right. Just a warning in advance. I'm going to be talking now for almost an hour from this point on. And that's why I prepared this for you guys. Anybody on Reddit? Anybody knows what that means? TLDR. Too long, did not read. That's what you do as a snark, ironic reply to someone who writes a lot, and you just, or talks a lot, and you just say TLDR. Too long, didn't bother. So this is the single takeaway before you fall asleep because I'm talking and talking and talking. The only thing you need to know to have 90% of your job done is this. Answer me what problem you're solving and which solution you're offering.
We're offering a moderne Verpflegungsbusiness für Büro mit einem modernen.
Which problem are you solving?
Verpflegung bad food.
Okay. You're the same team? Or? Yep. Which problem are you solving and how are you solving it?
The problem is to integrate artificial intelligence into a large company, and we're doing that by offering a software platform that helps.
Okay. You two on the same team or? No. Which problem are you solving? How are you solving it?
The problem is the communication between people and
Okay, we got work to do. Which problem are you solving and how are you solving it?
productivity manufacturing. Companies will be productive. Now that we offer is a tool for them to
Which problem are you solving?
the fact that it's tough to improve productivity manufacturing without the proper.
Okay. You want to try again? Which problem you're solving and how are you solving it? For whom? Where?
Business.
Okay. And how are you solving it? Okay. All right, that's better. Which problem are you solving and how are you solving it?
I totally funny things that we solved the same problem that you mentioned. I don't know if the better way was, but it's the same. They call them that my wife almost had. We work in a small business office and has no food solution for the whole day. We can eat sweets and delivery service from Italian, but not really good healthy fast for food. And so we solved the same problem in the same way. I don't know.
All right.
Because it's really interesting. It's the same way to solve the problem. We will see.
We will find out.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. You guys on the same team? Yeah. Which problem? Ja, klar.
Wir wollen Radfahren die Belohnung zukommen lassen über Marketing,
Kommst du von Radbonus? Also die Firma heißt Radbonus. Ah, kenne ich ja. Klingt genauso, wie ich das beschreiben würde. Okay, cool. All right. Then I have a sort of overview of what you guys are doing. But I think we all can approve. Some are a bit too long, some are a little bit abstract. And I'll just give you a warning in advance. In the startup world, you get minus points for being abstract. You get minus points for being fancy. You get plus points for speaking to me as an investor like a child. I don't want to think. I want to get it boom, boom, like that. I don't get it in 3 seconds. You're done. You're toast. So let's do a gut check here. We had already sort of now 90% of the work done. If we can nail this pitch, we can make it understandable to a 6-year-old child, and we can pick up the phone when someone actually is calling from a different time zone in California and you're sleeping, and you can just tell exactly what you're about in 1 sentence that a 6-year-old child can get, you're 90% of the way. You cannot imagine how many startups I see weekly that cannot tell their own story. They cannot tell what the hell they're doing and why they're doing it and why this is important. Yes? Because they got their head up their own idea. They haven't really sat down. I mean, you're busy doing things, right? You have the view cap of someone who's doing and working, right? And sometimes you are solution oriented. A lot of people are so fascinated by their own idea and their own solution, they don't stop and think about what does the customer care about? What is it that we're working for the customer to solve? And sometimes it's just a way we're used to talking about this from school or university or work, that we talk about it like a project, or we talk about it like what it is, the what, not why, not who it actually helps and why it helps, right? So also because we're mostly domain experts in the problems ourselves, so we don't take the time to explain to others why this is a problem or what the problem is. But the number one reason I see, which is the dangerous one, is that they're so in love with their own idea that they don't care about what the customer actually wants to get solved. Which is, of course, dangerous because that's not a way to build a company. Now, let's do a reality check. That was sort of the gut check here to see how we talk about our company, how we pitch it. Now, what is the investor looking for? Whatever we pitch them, we talk about the problem, need, solution, market, size, huge. Go-to-market, it's going to be awesome. Team, fantastic. Competition, almost non-existent. We're so good. Financials, break even in year 5. Don't even go there. So we only need 500 million to be able to hit our milestones in the next 6 months. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever you say, this is what the VC is actively or sort of subconsciously listening for. They're listening for, can we actually make money here? Are these the right people? Do they have the team that is credible? Is it plausible that these people will be able to make me a shitload of money? And exactly how much money can we make here with these people? Are they ambitionate enough? And how freaking huge is this market? Because a VC will only invest if and only if your team complete and it's plausible that this team is the right team that can take this company interesting places to deliver on the value propositions. And if you're operating in a total market or in a market with a total market size, that is huge. We're going to get back to that later, what is meant by huge. You might have better luck with different sort of attitudes and expectations with a business angel, but this is definitely what a VC is looking for. Venture capitalists need to see a 10x return, which means to say, if I put $1 million in, there needs to be potential at least for getting 10 million, at least to get 10 million out of this. Now, there are 3 types of pitches, like I told you about in the beginning. Now I will reveal to you which they are. It's the high concept pitch, the elevator pitch, and the pitch deck. You probably heard about them already. The high concept pitch, surprise, we already practiced it. One of the best ways of doing a high concept pitch is just to tell people which problem you're solving or need you're solving and who you're solving it for, maybe, and definitely tell about how you're solving it. And that's it. I always say it's like the mom pitch. If I cannot explain to my mom what I do with a one-sentence pitch, there's no way in hell the audience and my customers are necessarily going to be able to be interested or understand. So it just basically summarizes what your business do and why in a sentence or two. And of course, you have the famous X4y pitch, which is the Hollywood pitch by far, where we're the, what was that? The Alien movie was pitched like, it's Jaws in space, weiße Hai in Weltall. So there's a lot of sort of, I don't know, it's been used a lot, this kind of pitch. So you might be careful about using it. And you definitely need to be careful about using we're the X4y pitch if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Because there's a lot of people who say like, oh yeah, we're the Tinder for something. And they just thought Tinder because we can swipe and that's fun and we have the feature that they have, but we don't have the business model, we're not about dating or whatever, or matching, whatever, it's just that we have this feature. So be aware when you say something about we're the X4y, you need to have one, the X needs to be a well-known example, and the Y needs to be a well-known example. So it's like concept 1 with concept 2, concept 3, I can imagine what that means because I know both the other concepts. And also implicitly you're saying something about your business model and your target audience. When you say like I'm a Tinder, oh, so you're subscription-based and you a subscription-based service. No, we're a marketplace. So why the fuck would you say you're a Tinder? So the high concept pitch, be brief. One short sentence should do it. You do not get extra points for being complicated. And speak to me as an investor like you would to a 6-year-old child. And I don't mean this that you're going to be talking down to them, but this is not academia. This is not a professor you're talking to. The investor sees thousands of pitches each year. You have about 3 seconds to make them interested because they see so many. And if you start talking blah, 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 blah about things that you're a domain expert in, be aware that they are not. They have invited you to learn more about your business because you're the expert in what you're doing. Many percentages of the time, probably 80% of the time, they really don't know anything about that level that you're at. An investor taught me this in Silicon Valley. He just stopped me at the beginning of the pitch because I was talking about complicated technical stuff and he was just like, stop! So he said, like, basically, I know you're new here and you're from Europe over there somewhere and you guys probably do this differently, but I'll tell you, right now, I have invited you here to talk about your stuff because I don't know about these new things that you are working on in this new technology field. And you need to be able to talk to me on the level of a 6-year-old child so I can understand immediately so we don't have to have a whole day here like a technical seminar because I don't have the time, I don't have the interest. If you lose me in 3 seconds, I'm going to be thinking about who's next on my agenda. I'm going to be thinking about how long for lunch. And I'm going to be pretty soon thinking about who I'm going to golf with later today. So if you lose me in the 3 seconds, I'm gone. We don't get extra points for being complicated. Be super simple. So the elevator pitch, that's the next level of pitches. So think about the high concept pitch that we just talked about and you guys also had a reasonable, comprehensive version of as your introductory pitch, right? So we're at a Rhineland pitch, or we're at a mixer, or we're some at a conference or something, and you go like, hi, I'm Vidar. I'm doing a Flickr for videos. Anybody heard about Flickr for videos? Who could have used that pitch? Yeah, YouTube. Of course, the investor's then going to go like, hey, okay, cool, you know the game. You're not wasting my time. I can totally understand. You're for consumers. It's like images, but it's with videos and it's free to use. Interesting. Tell me more. That's exactly what we want to be hearing the whole time. Interesting. Tell me more. You don't want to come off as some person that hasn't practiced, that doesn't know how to really value someone's time. So you're going to go in 10 seconds or less, maybe 3, you have actually told the investor, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I was able to explain to you in 3 seconds exactly what we're doing. Of course, you're going to be asking me to get more information. Now, what are we going to deliver when they ask for more information? They say, oh, cool, tell me more. we are going to deliver the famous elevator pitch, which is about 30 seconds-ish. There's no rule, but over 60 seconds, that's definitely pushing it. Now, what is the elevator pitch? Anybody know where it comes from? Oh, but let's wait. You talked already. Let's see if there's someone else. Yeah?
Probably you step into an elevator with the investor and until he gets off.
Exactly. It used to be on Wall Street when we were building the high-rises, the skyscrapers, that you had to take the elevator. They had only owned one elevator. They were expensive. So the management floor was, of course, the top floor. And you could step inside with your manager before they went up. Before you had to go out, before they had one more floor to go, you could maybe talk to them for 30 seconds plus because they couldn't run away. So you could pitch them. You know, pitching comes from English where you throw something at someone. So you basically have a captive audience because they do not run away for about 30 seconds. And this is also a good analog to, let's say, being at a networking party, investor party, whatever it is. There's all sorts of events where investors are, conferences, for instance. Maybe you're at South by in Austin. And then you go like, hey, I'm Vidar, I'm doing Flickr for video. And then you go like, awesome, so tell me more. Then we have like 30 seconds to talk about our stuff and our things before it gets awkward, right? That's why it's still a captive audience, because you sort of have the social obligations to be standing there and talking for a bit. But if you're going on and on and on and on and on, and there's no things in there that the investor wants to hear, they're going to go like, oh, thank you, that's so cool. But what, oh, there's Peter. Hang on, hey, goodbye. Hey, Peter. You know, they're going to be moving out of that conversation because you're not respecting their time and you're not getting to the point fast enough. So what on earth is the elevator pitch? Well, one way of thinking about it is it's a cocktail. It's a cocktail that consists of traction, product, team, and social proof. Doesn't really matter in which line of order you put it in. And it doesn't really matter how much you talk about each. You should obviously talk about the thing that you have the most of, right? Now, anybody got an idea what traction means?
Metrics that show that you have some form of success. Customers.
A letter from my mom, is that success? Or
That would be numbers of customers.
numbers, yes. Data, facts, numbers, good. Something that shows something about growth, something that shows something about revenue, traction, fantastic. The German word would probably be momentum as well. Now, anybody got an idea what social proof could be? No? Social proof is two things. What it tells the investor is that I am not the first person that has to find out that you're full of hot air or insane. That is to say, someone vetted you. Was it a journalist? Was it a magazine? Was it a conference? Was it a patent? Was it anything that you did in the world? You put your idea and product into the world and the world reacted, and you can show to facts in the world, like the best in the world is, of course, to have customers that loves your product and paid money for it. If you can put faces, logos, names, and titles and quotes, that's like fantastic social proof. And if you have like 1 million users, that's probably onto something. That's pretty damn good social proof as well. So social proof is basically telling the investors, I'm not the first one that has to find out what the hell is behind here. And also, of course, it gives you more credibility because the market has already responded to your product. Product, hopefully self-evident. You should be the experts in simply explaining your own product. Yet a lot of founders forget to talk about where the product lives. Is it physical? Is it digital? Is it retail? Is it a combination of physical, digital? What's the business model behind it? And also, they forget to say it's beta, it's MVP, it's a click dummy, it's actually version 4. We've been doing this now for 100 years. So where does it live? Is it on a server in your basement? Is it on Amazon? Is it an app? Is it a web thing? And of course, team. Team, we saw already, is one of the most important metrics for the investment decision for a VC. That is to say, you need to be able to tell the story about why the team is competent and why this is the team that's going to be able to make it big. Why this team is the right team for this task. There's 30 seconds. You can put it in any line of order you want. You put emphasis on what you got the most of, and that's your elevator pitch. There's more examples in here online. So it's traction, product, team, and social proof. What we have now is a pitch progression that starts with the sort of intro or the high concept pitch, the icebreaker pitch, if you will, as well. You just tell people like, hey, I'm Vidar, I'm doing Flickr for video, and they go like, whoa, cool, interesting, this guy knows the game. Already know what he's doing. Okay, tell me more, cool. And then you go, boom, here's my elevator pitch. You practiced, you practiced, you practiced. You can nail it in 35 seconds. They go like, wow, that's impressive. You got to send me your pitch deck. This is what we want to hear. We don't want to be sending cold pitch decks to random emails. We want to have someone who does investments that we want money from telling us to send them their pitch, to send us to have them ask us to send our pitch deck to them. We have a warm lead. What we do, we send them a pitch deck in the form of a PDF, and of course we send it as fast as possible, at least within 24 hours. Just remind the investor where we met, what your elevator pitch is, and then if you want to be really clever, also maybe put in some dates where you're available for a meeting. Instead of just sitting on your hands and go like, maybe they're going to call me. You know, put in some dates and say, well, after that we have to move on, and it's moving quite fast right now, so maybe on Friday. Now, what we want to hear after we've sent the deck, because after we sent the deck, we're not there yet. We want to be invited to a meeting, or we want to have a talk or conversation where we agree on a meeting, either by the investor or somewhere neutral. Depends on the investor and depends on your preference. But we want to have a meeting with the investor. Why do we want to have a meeting with the investor? Anybody? How on earth are you going to have a decision about you getting an investment if you don't have a meeting? So this is the way it usually goes. You will have a meeting, and sometimes you will have more meetings. There are many people who will tell you there are many meetings that could be had, especially if they're saying that from the VC part. I'm saying and telling you from the founders part, it doesn't have to be like that. If you have a lot of founders, if you have a lot of investors lined up that you are ready to take money from because they're interested, then you can make it in one meeting. Because you can tell them this is how it's supposed to be running, and you're already talking to these people. If you don't have an alternative, you can imagine how needy you're going to sound. But if you have 3 others that are already sort of interested in giving you money, imagine how confident you are, and imagine also how fast you can get to a decision. Because what you don't want to have is that they invite you to one meeting, and then another meeting, and then another meeting, and then another meeting, and this takes ages. And all these people who are sitting in this meeting are getting paid a salary. You're not. So they don't have any sort of special pain point of taking meetings with you one after the other. And also, you can sort of say that VCs that do that as assholes, but that's a different story because they know how painful. They should know, definitely should know how painful it is to do meetings when you have different stuff to do. I mean, you have to work on your product, you have to work with your team, you have stuff to do other than taking meetings about blah, blah, blah. And of course, you don't want to take meetings all the time with people who has the title of associates. Why? They don't make decisions. There's some argument to be said that, yeah, it's okay to have a meeting with an associate because they can make an introduction and they can make a recommendation to their partners. Depending on your maturity, depending on how much traction and how much good stuff you're able to show and how attractive your offering is for this round, you may not want to have meetings at all with associates. Whatever you do, when you get to the meeting, before the meeting, you should have a list of attendees. And you know if there's all of them have titles of associate, that's probably what we call a fishing expedition. The fishing expedition could be that they're really interested, just want to know a little bit more about you, but not necessarily, because if they're really interested, there would be a partner or two in that conversation. And also a fishing expedition could also be that they have competitors to you that they're also considering deals with, and they just want to see what are you doing differently so they can pass that information on to the others. Or they can sort of pick and choose which one they're going to be financing. So be very aware that you're not going to have any sort of financing decision in a meeting where you have only associates. You need partners in the room. You need seniors. So, that said, what do we send the investor? We send them the pitch deck. What we do not send them is a business plan, but we're going to get to that. Now, we also need to know, before we get started, if your pitch is going to be a data pitch or a high concept pitch. What do I mean by that? Well, did you already launch something? Do you have a product in the marketplace that is gathering data? Then we need to be prepared to show everything we got. All the data, all the facts, all the numbers. We have to be able to pull down our pants and show everything. If we haven't launched and we don't have a product in the marketplace, or maybe it's sort of in an MVP, we need to be able to sell the vision of how amazing this is going to be once it is in the marketplace. How it's going to change the world and make everything like double rainbows and laughing unicorns flying through the air. Now, of course, be aware that there's a paradox to that, right? Sometimes it can be easier to raise on a vision than on facts, because day 2, after you've launched, what kind of traction are you going to be having? Probably very meager to non-interesting. So be aware there is a paradox that sometimes it's easier to raise the first round on the vision instead of facts. All right, so what is the pitch deck? The pitch deck that we're talking about today is definitely not a business plan. It is not 80 pages of blah, 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 and lies on end. Projections like year 3, we're going to be break even. Year 5, we're going to have plus. Yeah. If you do that, I can tell you if you send 80, 60, 70 pages to a VC, they're going to click delete. I mean, they told me so much as well. Even the Europeans ones, they don't have the time to bother to educate you because you obviously didn't know what to send, so they don't want to work with you because there's 1,000 others that's in a virtual waiting line outside their door that has a pitch deck that makes it easier for them to understand what the deal is about. So don't send them a business plan ever. Now, that said, going back to the initial question, are you an Existenzgründung or a new company or a startup? Well, if you're an Existenzgründung or a new company with a sort of existing business model that may have been around for millions of years, and you're eligible for credit at a bank, then you still need to write a friggin' business plan. That's the game, how that game works. Now we're talking startups over here. Like I said, we're only going to be talking about what works for startups today. For startups, you need to send a pitch deck, and sending a business plan is a no-no because it's going to be deleted. And also, if you hear a startup investor going like, oh yeah, schick mir bitte einen Businessplan, send me a business plan, then before you tell them to shove it, ask them very politely, oh sir, do you mean a pitch deck? Or do you mean like a 60, 80 page sort of projection document? Many times, because they've been used to saying business plan, they still mean the more modern pitch deck. Just make sure that you're both speaking about the same thing. If you have a startup and they say, send me a business plan, no, the 60, 70 pages is okay. It doesn't have to be 80, but 70 is okay. Then run. There's no need to continue the conversation with this guy because they obviously don't know what they're doing. Or they know what they're doing, but they're confusing you for an Existenzgründung, which is not what a startup is about. Now, what do we send them? We send them a PDF, obviously. We don't send them a Prezi or Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever. Just send them a PDF. Everybody can open a PDF. Make sure it's compressed and it's not 100 gigabytes. Don't put videos in it, please. The deck contents? About sort of 13 pages. You might want to have a more, you want to have a less. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about the backups. You can have 1 trillion pages in your backup. That's fine. But this is the one that was going to sort of tell your story and get the investor interested or not. So let's just get started here. The first one, cover. Of course, now we know that there's 1,000 people in a virtual waiting line at the investor, if that investor is any good. Now make the cover of your presentation memorable. Why? human psychology, right? If that one looks fun and entertaining and colorful and interesting, I'm going to take that one as the first one I'm going to read today, because all modern office software previews the first cover slide, right? So you can see what's in there. And if I see the same friggin' keynote Steve Jobs wannabe black background with gradient and white Helvetica Neue text, maybe I'm not going to take that today, and maybe I'm just going to take the one with a lolcat with a festive hat or a meme or something that looks interesting and entertaining, or at least professional. So make it memorable. And also put your logo on there, your tagline, you know, the Flickr for video, for instance. Your contact details. Why? Again, make it super easy for investors to contact you. Because there's a preview image, so you can just go, oh, there's an email, or oh, there's the telephone number, because maybe you've sent it by email, but you never know where this presentation is going to end up. So maybe they don't have your email address attached to the PDF, right? And there's two reasons for this, but please use 30-point fonts or higher. The one is super pragmatic, the other is super tragic. There's a tragic reason why we need to put 30-point fonts or higher, and there's a pragmatic one. Anybody wants to guess what's the pragmatic one? Less is more, exactly. We don't want to be writing a Bible. We want to put as little text as possible. And using bigger fonts is going to limit ourselves. Now, the other thing here, which is a tragic one, is that most investors are still old men. Old men cannot read for shit. I have lenses inside here. So if you want to be readable in the boardroom, or if they're going to be reading it on their Mac with their Retina screens, if your text is too small, they will think, this is not worth my time, because I'm being reminded I'm an old bastard. I just delete it, or I cannot read it, and it's friction and it's frustration. Just make it big enough so old geezers like myself can read it. Now the next one. Next slide, mission. What is it that you're striving to achieve? So raison d'être behind your company. So it's the why and the how. It's not something you already completed. If you already completed it, that would not be a mission, right? That would be just a to-do or a milestone. So why is this an important company? Like, imagine Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? They exist, I guess, to eradicate poverty in the world. And the way they do it is by eliminating one disease at a time or something like that, right? It's like, why do you exist, and what do you do when you get up every day to achieve this big mission? Summary is the next slide, and here I'm glad to say we can be super efficient or lazy, depending on how you want to see it. We can also put the executive summary or the elevator pitch, basically, in here, because the elevator pitch contains exactly what we need to put into the summary. It's all the good bits that the investor is going to be interested in, up to that point. So basically also a way of thinking about the summary is also about telling the investor, onboarding the investor, what have we been achieving without you so far in a very short time. And now from this point on, we're going to probably be talking about how this could work out for us both together. So everything to this point in summary is past. I see so many startups who put all the things they're going to be doing, like hot talking air, about all the good things they're going to be doing in the summary. That's bullshit. And of course, every investor knows it. Everybody can talk. Not everybody can show that they've done amazing things in a very short time. So put the amazing things you've done, like in the elevator pitch, into your summary. That also gives me reason to keep on reading, because we already know that investors get too much information. They don't want to sort of wade through a lot of slides to get to the reason why they should keep on reading. So the summary should be super compelling, and then you can make sure that they will keep on reading your pitch deck. And now we see team. A lot of German pitches have the team at the back. I'm not a big fan of that. There are people in the US who are even much more vehemently not a fan of that. Well, you can also imagine why, if one of the most important things that they're looking for The most important asset in the investment is the team. So if that's the most important thing to an investor, you can imagine what they feel like when you're taking forever to get to present the team. And you can look up, for instance, Mark Suster. He got a famous blog called Both Sides of the Table. He's an investor out of LA, quite successful. He is very, very pissed off almost to the point of leaving the meeting if you don't immediately tell them who you are and why you're there and what your team looks like. Because why would you not establish your credibility as soon as possible? You know, have them read more. Because if you're building a rocket engine and you have 4 NASA engineers, that's compelling. That's freaking interesting. But I have to be guessing the whole time, if you haven't really talked about your team and showed me your team, to the end of the presentation, if you're an MBA that has no clue about rocket engineering, if you haven't presented your team. So establish your authority, talk about who is doing this, and then you have like the permission internally in the mind of most investors that, yeah, I've got to be listening to this because this is amazing people. They can do it, you know? If you can avoid it, don't put the team at the back. It's important. And of course, like I said, do not talk about irrelevant stuff your team has done, right? Like let's say we're building a new rocket engine that's gonna kill it. It's gonna be the first to Mars. Screw you, SpaceX. We're gonna do it faster than SpaceX. And then you say, we have 3 co-founders, 3 star MBAs from Harvard. What's the problem with that? Yeah, they're all the same, yes. They're too homogeneous. But what's the most important problem with that? Who's building the engine? Who's building the IP? Yeah, where's the engineers that we can believe in can make this happen? You know, you're gonna be accounting your way through to building a machine. I don't know. So you have to, of course, put emphasis on what's relevant. And also, if someone has been at McKinsey and they've been at Bain or God knows where, why would you put up that there if that was not reflecting on what they learned about customer needs that this product is based on? It's bullshit. Nobody cares. So, boom, problem. We see here now, problem. The slide problem comes before solution. Quite elementary, but a lot of startups screws this up, which is sort of understandable if you understand sometimes the idea comes first and then they sort of try to find some people who has the problem later. Now, of course, we don't want to come off like that when we're presenting, when we're pitching. We want to make sure that we first talk about establishing which problem or need we're solving. If we're the other way around, the investor will think, mostly rightly, that we have made some shit and now we're desperately trying to figure out who could need it. That's not something they like to fund, because that's usually crap. Usually what's interesting is that you have found a need or a problem or a deficit in the market and you have come up with a solution towards that deficit or need. So talk about the problem, be quick, be emotional. If you want to, you can also talk about how big this problem is. How many people feels this, how much revenue gets lost, whatever it is, big numbers, total available market opportunity, you can talk about it here. And of course, if you want to be neurologically hacking your audience, you can also show images of people having the problem. Because images go straight through and you feel it rather than think it. Boom, then we talk about solution, okay? First, we talk about how the world has these problems. It's almost like a hand. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And then, woo, solution fits magically, perfectly like a glove on these problems. And for God's sakes, show, don't tell. If you have something, show. If you have anything, be it even whiteboard sketches, show something. If you have nothing but bullet points and text and hot air, you can imagine how well that's going to go down. Now, think about it this way. There's 2 ways of doing this really wrong. The sad part, the sad version is when people don't have anything to show, because it's just an idea. So they forgot to take the pictures with them from the whiteboard or whatever, or the sketches or whatever. That's sad in itself. You know, it's probably way too early for an investor if your name is not Mark Zuckerberg or you've done this a couple of times before. So that's sad. But on the other hand, it's a misunderstanding. First time, everything okay. What is unforgivably fucked up is if you already built something and you're good at it, and you might even have some traction and the product is fantastic and it's fucking awesome, but you don't show it. That's like, here's the gun. Okay, thank you. Foot. You know, you only sometimes get one chance. If you don't show things that you build when you have it, that's like clinically insanity. Don't forget to show your product. And of course, talk about how it solves the problem first. Just establish sort of why this is the right solution, and then show it. And also, of course, plan time for showing it. And of course, now I need to digress a little bit because there's so many things you can fuck up when you want to show it. The one thing that I see a lot, which is sort of I guess it comes with the territory when everybody wants to make a startup, is that everybody makes an explainer video because they bought it for $5 in Bulgaria or something. And then they go to the PC or the Mac and they start play and then go here and they go like, you know, and there's some sort of cheesy voiceover that bought on VoiceRabbit or something for $25 and blah, 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 explain, explain, explain. Okay, if that's you in the boardroom with the investors, what do you think they're thinking about you? How to tell you to fuck off friendly? Because they invited you to learn more about you, not to Netflix and chill. If they wanted to watch videos, they could do it online, right? But on the other hand, do you have products that are so much more, so extremely complicated to explain? By all means, have videos to explain it. If you have a product that has emotional responses with customers, by all means, show people how they react and interact with your product. Fantastic. But just don't be that idiot that thinks that I can sort of skip my pitch and just put everything in an explainer video. They want to know about you. I mean, a lot of investors will take it as disrespect that you play videos instead of actually talking. So one way you can mitigate that is, of course, don't do the explainer videos. Do videos that makes clear what the product is about. A demo, for instance. So people actually filmed using your product, enthusiastic about your products, things like that. But on the other hand, do the talking yourself. It's so easy. Just mute the volume, know exactly what you want to say, and interact. Make it more fun and interesting, that show people that you're in the room, that you're engaged, that you're really excited about what it is you're doing, right? And this is also important because if you have prepared what you say in German, Tonspur, if you have the voice track already in your mind, sometimes you have digital products that you want to show online, which may not work, right? Because you need a connection. But some of us are clever enough to have sort of checked out of Git or Subversion in the morning. You checked out a local version, and then you figure out when you're in the boardroom, oh, there's no online connectivity. It doesn't matter. I'm a champion here. I have a local development environment. I'm going to start it. And then, shit, I don't have the latest libraries. There's some dependencies, and there's a bug. Oh, fuck it. It doesn't work because I didn't test it. Now, what could you do? So, well, I have the video. Okay, let's do the video thing. Okay, no live today. Okay, video. Okay, what do we know about the universal law of videos? It never fucking works when you need it to work. I have seen this with Lori Grainer. There was this woman who, this guy from a startup who done something with Super Mario pipes and peer-to-peer teleportation data. Amazing, fantastic. We have a 3-minute explainer video. It's amazing. We'll tell you. It's so great. Cost a fortune. Fantastic. And this was at a private pitching event at the basement of the Web Summit in London, the year it was in London. And I was invited with my startup, and there was 3 other startups. And there were like some friends, investors, like Lori Grainer and 3 of her friendly sort of VCs. They were there looking at European startups that they have sort of searched out in advance. So when they were in London, when in Europe, they wanted to see those pitches. And this guy was just talking, and the technician was trying to get the video to start, and it was impossible. And basically, you could see Laurie Grainer and the rest of the guys are going like, what's going on with this guy? And he was like, yeah, it's super, it's fantastic, it's already time up, sorry. And she basically told him in a more friendly way than me to, this is the stupidest idiot that she never, ever saw, and probably nobody wants to work with him ever, because it's disrespectful of the time of other people not to have prepared. And secondly, it would be so fucking simple to just have screenshots, right? Whatever you do, if you have a video, if you have a live demo with internet connection, if you have a local development version, put at the least very bit, put screenshots of the same in there, right? So if you have a video of the demo that you're going to be doing, okay, try that first maybe, then you're going to try a live demo, okay, no internet, okay, fine. You're going to do the development version, okay, doesn't work, okay, fine. But what always works is screenshot, you know? Just put it in there and fold it in. You can just go click, 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 click until something works. There's nothing worse than having someone telling the audience, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. Because you have it in your hand, right? I mean, you can make it work if you want to. There's no reason in hell you would not put screenshot in there without being lazy or stupid. Put some screenshots in there and you will never, ever have the problem. Use the same voice track on presenting the video, presenting the live demo, presenting the local demo, presenting the screenshots, and you'll be fine. You will not skip a beat. No one will notice that something is not working. You will just click on till something works. Never, ever tell the audience what they don't know, because they don't know what they don't know. And just let's leave it like that, you know? Let's not look like amateur hour. Let's not come off as complete idiots that haven't prepared. All right, so God help you if you have nothing to show. Now, technology, next slide. What's under the hood? Was ist unter der Haube? Do you have any special built technology? Is this IP protected? Is there any patents? Are you using someone else's IP? Do you have licensees? So that is to say, for instance, in one of my startups, we had a license for software called Neo4j. That meant that it was quite expensive to scale, or there was costs with scaling, which meant that that's an important information to understand why we need money to scale. Or conversely, are you using something that cost money where you could be using something that was open source instead? Or conversely, are you building something super exotic that makes it the nightmare to maintain with a sort of a developer base of one employee, where you could be using something else that everybody else is using? So it would be developed faster and it would be much safer if some of your developers got run over by a bus. And of course, have you protected anything? Is there a patent? Is there Musterschutz? What's exactly the secret sauce that you're building behind all of this? Next one, marketing. Quantifiable, no bullshit projections. Nothing like, oh, we're going to be buying Twitter users for 100 euros a pop, when you have absolutely no idea what's going to cost you, right? Just because someone bought something for something at some time does not mean that you can be able to do the same. Your value proposition is different than their value proposition. The online marketing costs are different from day to day. The channels change our algorithms weekly, monthly, daily. And your value proposition does not necessarily, is not even remotely near their value proposition, and your customer segments are probably also going to be different, and you don't have access to the targeting and so on and so forth. So if you don't know, you don't know. That's it. If you have no data to base your predictions on, you don't have anything to project. Now, what we should be doing at this point, if you didn't already at the problem stage, or the problem slide, you should be talking about the market size. How large is this opportunity? We're going to get back to how to do that. And if you haven't launched, like I said, don't talk bullshit about all the things that you're going to be spending money on and whatnot that you have no clue about what it's going to be costing. Talk through, for the plausibility analysis that I as an investor is going to be having, talk through about how have you planned, how you talk with your team, how you're going to acquire the users today, How are you going to acquire them when you get a little bit more mature as a company? And how are you probably going to be able to afford better to get your customers acquired in the future when you reach more maturity? And of course, if you have launched, if you're in the market, you need to be able to show us how your CAC and LTV looks like. That is to say, cost of user acquisition versus customer lifetime value, what your growth rate is, what your activation rates are, what your churn is, blah, 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 blah. So like I said, you really have to show everything. And this doesn't need to be too complicated for an early stage startup, right? This is Mint.com's actual slide. They're talking about, I mean, even the Pokemon was in there before Pokemon came back and was popular again. But they're talking about how have we been thinking to acquire users when we're launching, how when we're growing, and when we reach more maturity. This is basically feeding back to the investor what your thinking is. Are you insane? Are you incompetent? Or are you actually sort of ambition, this is on the Venn diagram, are you ambitionate yet not insane? Are you actually credible? Does this make any sense? How do you want to acquire the users or your customers? Next slide, sales. Again, not blah blah or projection, or we're going to hire 50,000 biz dev somethings for all the money that we don't have. It's actual, because no business plan ever survives first contact with customer. They say you can plan as much as you want and talk as much hot air as you want. Once you start executing, things fall apart. So if you don't have any sales, obviously don't talk about it. Let's actually, again, show the investor how we've been thinking, right? Some startups are probably not going to be profitable or make any money for a long time, especially if you're B2C. Social platforms, some whatever, you may not be making any significant money for a long time. So talk about what you think the business model could be looking like. How could this be making money? Use a business model canvas. It's super easy. One slide, one A4 page that will show your thinking, reflect your thinking back to the investor, where they can sort of think with their plausibility hat on, does this make any sense? Can we sort of pattern recognize this as bullshit or pattern recognize this as golden opportunities? And of course, ignore the cost of user acquisition if you have no basic data that you gathered yourself. Then again, it's never been cheaper to do experiments on getting consumers or acquiring consumers. If you're in consumer space and you're searching for money because you say, we're going to be using 50K on acquiring users, if I would be sort of a semi-sophisticated investor, I would say, why? What have you done so far with your own money to show me that 50K in Twitter advertisement is well spent? Why haven't you de-risked that yourself already, because it's so damn fucking cheap? Now, if you have sales, this is of course your slide to be a superstar. To put the name, the logo, the quotes of the customers on the slides. Maybe even there's a lot of money, put sums and numbers up there if you want to. Of course, there's nothing more compelling than having actually sold something to a customer. Now, you will find much more information about this online, so I'm not going to delve into it right now, but there's many unfamiliar terms maybe that I've been talking about up till now. For instance, CAC versus LTV and so on and so forth. Just be aware that is something that you guys need to know what is before you want to raise money, because these questions are going to come up in the conversation and you're going to look pretty inexperienced if you don't know what they are. But rest assured, you can find it online. These are just some references. Be aware, for instance, that if you're B2C, one of the main things you're going to be measured on, and if you're a digital B2C thingy, then you are going to be measured on your growth rate and your engagement rate. So the good news is we sort of know what we need to sort of hit on. The bad news is that it's a freaky lot, 7 to 10% week over week growth in users to be exciting and sexy to a VC. And you also need, that's also bad news, you need not only to grow, you need to keep engaging your users if you have a digital consumer product. So if people go into your app or download your app and they don't really care about it because they don't engage and use it on a regular basis, that's also not really something that the investor is going to be very interested in. So 30-10-1 just means that if you want to have a benchmark for how good or bad you're doing, if 30% of all your users come back and use the app monthly, 10% use it daily, and 1% at any given time you look in the real-time database, if you're in B2C, that's a good place to be, or better. And of course, warning in advance, this is going to come up. I'll bet you money on it. If you don't know cohort analysis and you don't do cohort analysis, now is the time to go home after this and do it. Because this is the only way you're going to have any way of having any reasonable discussion about causality behind your numbers and your analytics. And there's basically a whole website dedicated to explaining it, because I could probably have a day worth of seminar on doing cohort analysis, but I'm not going to bore you with the details. I'm just going to make sure that you understand that if you don't know your cohorts, that's bad. Really bad. So know your cohorts. Yes?
Does that apply also?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Even more so, maybe. I mean, it's because the focus on data there anyway, because
they don't churn day to day.
Well, churn is just one thing, right? There's several other KPIs that you should be measuring, right?
Okay.
I have seen that question. You have the referencing number 30 and 1.
Yeah, MRR, monthly recurring revenue.
What is considered?
It depends on what you want, right? Depends on if you want to raise a seed level. Let's say if you want to raise from, actually, I'll show you later, but there's sort of some statistics out there on this. Depends mostly on how much do you want. I mean, there's two ways of thinking about this. One is, okay, how much MRR do I need to have to be able to raise a certain amount of money? On the other hand, how much MRR do I need to have to just say, fuck you, investor? Because if your MRR is good enough, why do you need an investor? Both are the latter is individual, where you need to make sure that you know where you want to be. And the other one, it's here. It's called the SaaS napkin. It's from Christoph Jans. Very nice chap who's the founder of Point 9 Cap, ex-founder and tech geek, who is together with David Skok, one of the thought leaders in SaaS investment. And you'll find them in here. There's links to them. Every year they have the SaaS napkin, which basically surveys all the SaaS investors, and they get sort of a statistic of how much MRR they need to see, how many customers you need to have. I mean, what is the usual deals that these kinds of investors are doing at the moment. But then again, there's a money bag out there with your name on it. You can always find dumb money. I mean, money is laying on the street. It's just that would be, the napkin would be for like what they call sophisticated VC money. Now also churn rate came already up. Basically, anybody know what churn is? Right?
Churn is the rate of users that leave you. So they try and use it. And then
Right. And this is relevant for B2B and B2C, but on different levels. What is most important is that you understand as a founder that what you have at the moment when you start, an incredibly rusty bucket. It's full of holes. And there's a meager amount of water in it. The holes are all the churn possibilities, all the reasons why people churn and don't engage. So the water is the users or customers. Your first big job as a founder is to fill the largest holes in the bucket, right? And then the second largest job is to immediately find more water. You keep on filling it up so it doesn't dry. When it's drying out, you're dead, you're bankrupt, or you fold it, there's nothing more happening. So that's churn. There's also a website for that. You can find much more information on this online. I just make sure that you know that you need to know what these things mean. You need to have, for instance, cohort analysis, cohort analytics in place if you have anything digital going on. And also there's the SaaS funding napkin. It says link in here today. I can see here, for instance, if you want to have a Series A, is it valuation? Oh, they're talking about valuations and the round size there. There's the ARR, it's annual. So if you want to raise the Series A, they're going to looking for 1 to 1.5 million annual recurring revenue.
So what is
Annual.
rate of return?
No. What? Where is it? That's annually. Let's see. Here. That one. Annually recurring revenue. You can basically divide it on 12 from MRR.
If you have an annual rate recurring revenue of 100,000, then your valuation is between 5 to 7 million, and round size is
1 to 2 million for a seed.
so round size mean how much you're looking to raise, or
Now, what the deals typically look like.
so if I'm doing 100K per year, should rule of thumb 5 to 7 is my valuation. I'm probably looking 1 to 2 million.
Be aware that these are sort of statistics, right? This is one way of thinking of it that I encourage. You need the money that you need, right? You need the milestone. You know which milestones you need to hit to grow your company, and you need you know hopefully also what will bring more value to your valuation. How you can sort of de-risk your company, and why you need the money and how much you need. And then just looking at those guys who got 1 million when you actually need 2 million, that's dangerous. And also looking at those guys, they got 2 million, but you could actually get away with 1 million and have a better valuation. Forgetting that you're not statistics, right? So be aware that this is not sort of a game plan on how you're going to raise and why you're going to raise. It's just expectations. I mean, matching your expectations by looking at this. It will get an indication, is this going to be hard? Is it going to be sort of normal?
So for those who haven't been in the market more than probably a monthly.
So if we're talking pre-seed here, you probably don't have to have revenue. So maybe 250K, $500,000, maybe you can be able to raise that without having actual revenue.
1 year in the market, pre-seed?
The name of the round is an effect of if it's the first, second, or third, or whatever, and the size. If you haven't, I mean, I could have a seed round after 7 years if it's the first round.
The market since October, I did gain some money through selling my product. I'm looking for funds. I did an evaluation out of whatever, the blue. No sense of any reference at all.
Well,
whether I did a crap job.
Well, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. If it's your first round with an investor, the valuation is bullshit. You know, think about it this way: the valuation is not the starting point. It is what do you call it? A product of two functions. The function number one is how little or much money are you able to get, and the other variable is how little or much equity are you going to be able to sell or not. How little can you get away with, basically, and that will tell you what the evaluation would be. And every single good investor worth their salt would know that the first valuation round, where you have no customers, we have really no serious traction, is bullshit. It's just, it's what it is. It's money to reach more milestones, de-risk your business, and prove more behind this opportunity. And then there is a valuation because it's just a product of those two things. Two factors makes a product, and you don't start with a valuation. Well, that said, maybe at Series A, that's the real where you can get sort of more serious about claiming that your valuation should be this or that. But my advice would be don't fuss too much about valuation if it's your first round of money. Make sure that you sell as little as possible and get enough money for it to hit your milestones. Then it's going to be Very hard to get more money if you don't hit your milestones. Raising another round, which is, of course, I don't know if you guys know, but let's say you take money, a seed round for a seed stage investor, a VC. The game is on, right? It never stops. The assumption is that you're going to be raising, right? It's not going to be okay for you to take $500,000, let's say that's okay. You're going to be, the game is on. It's going to be growing, taking more money, selling more, taking more money. This is how the game works. So if you haven't hit your milestones, if you haven't got significant traction, so de-risked or showed the good stuff that the investors want to see, maybe they don't want to participate. Maybe it's going to be then super hard to raise another round because everybody else is going to looking at your initial investors, and the initial investors usually do follow on. If you don't follow on, all the other investors going to be looking like, maybe this is not so compelling. Maybe we don't wanna. All right, but don't fuss your valuation if it's your first round. Just look at what you need and how little equity you can get away with. And if you're doing SaaS, there's a truckload of stuff you need to know. The good thing is there's a lot of thinking by Christoph Jans and David Skok. Read their blogs, read everything of it. And there's a lot of work done on metrics. There's even free dashboards you can download so you can connect it and have like live dashboards that are tracking all the good KPIs and important stuff. It's online already. Now, market size, right? TAM, ZAM, ZOM. Probably heard about this, the pie chart and whatnot. When we're talking about market size, there's two things that the investor is really interested in. One is that the total available market is big enough, and we're talking billions of people or billions in revenue, not hundreds and thousands or 80 millions. And we're talking about serviceable available market. That's like theoretically how much of the total available market can I address, serviceable available market. And then serviceable obtainable market, or as I like to call it, target market, is your ambition, where you're going to be, how much you're going to be eating of this cake in the next 2 to 3 years. So the combination basically of this circle and that circle will tell the investors two important things. One is this a big enough opportunity, and are you guys actually credible in describing a market? Do you understand the market that you're operating in? And here, is it large enough? And here, are you guys ambitious enough? Do you want enough cake in the next 2 or 3 years? Or are you just insane? Or have absolutely no idea what it's going to take to get that amount of users or revenue? Or are you not ambitious, which makes it sort of not interesting to fund you because you are not hungry enough and you're not going to be able to make return on our invest? Yep.
The beginning was like 1 or 2, you said that big enough market. I'm going to tell you later what the answer is just 80 billion.
That's the most sort of qualified I can give you right now. If you want VC money, it doesn't make any sense to have something with less than billions. I don't know. Yeah, but so as long as you have billions, it should be fine. I mean, they're not going to say, okay, 2 billions is better than 4 billions. They're not going to say 1.2 is better than 1.1. I mean, and also this is not a science, just so we're clear on that. This is more like an art form where the investors are going to be more, again, using their plausibility analysis in their mind to see, are you guys actually aware of where you're operating? Are you sure that your product is targeting the market that you think you are? And do you have any clues as to how big this market is? And of course, paired up with your ambition. Does this make any sense, the level that you have, that you're telling them that you're going to be able to acquire of this market, how much you're going to be capitalizing of this market within 2 to 3 years? So that's a plausibility analysis again. Are you ambitious, are you lazy, or are you insane?
For that, I guess, it depends on the case. 1000%. Even a time of 1 million, some
You know, I would assume that you have a backup slide where you have an Excel or a picture of a napkin where you show me how you get the maths, right? Don't put that in here, but you have it in the backup so we can have a conversation about how did you arrive at these numbers.
Second question, since we're approaching the pitch time, we run pitch. And what we're getting ready for who's targeting? Because all the trick pitches, the elevator, the drama, and pitch deck, can be built for specific customers. Or that another way, I wouldn't have one for everyone. Talking to a customer, the set of information I'm providing.
Sure. To make it crystal clear why we're here, to make it crystal clear why a run-on pitch exists and why we're here, is the investor pitch. Not a sales pitch, it's the investor's pitch.
Why is Vodafone interested? Why is Vodafone interested?
Well, a market leader in IT technology for corporations.
All right.
Or overarching question, maybe
Yeah.
get to it later on.
Sure.
From basically what I'm taking away right now, whatever I've done so far was shit.
This is normal, just fine.
I have to do everything again, basically. I mean, I think I already have all the things in front. I just presented everything in basically the wrong way. Is that normal?
That's normal. Sure. It's not as bad as you think.
Yeah, okay.
It's usually you can reuse the things you have, it's just a different angle, right? Different viewpoint.
Yeah, and then where you can, like, okay, basically 0.01% of startups actually have something like that already, and most of them did it wrong. Or
I wouldn't put it like that. Most people that has the Google knows how to Google how to make a good pitch deck. So, and this is what you're going to find. So this is basically also what I need to impress on you guys and tell you guys and explain is that these things are not coming out of my ass, right? These are more or less the golden standards of how you pitch that has been developing since 2005 in Silicon Valley. And today, the 13 more or less slides are what is common practice even in Europe, right? And also, I'm heavily biased from Venture Hacks. Those are the guys who founded AngelList, right? So the thing here is that you just need to be aware that there may be other investors that have different expectations, but if you do the 13 slide more or less in that line of order as well, you cannot go wrong. Then it's not you, then it's the investor, basically. There should be sufficient information in there, if it's done right, for an investor to make a funding decision on. And they might have a preference that this should come before that, but that's like, I like mauve instead of Chardonnay red, you know, that's like, nobody really cares to discuss it. That's a very genetic question. Essential of life or essential of...
What must absolutely be on the pitch deck?
That's what we're here for. The 13 slides, man. Wakey, wakey! If you don't have if you leave out one of the 13 slides, guess what someone who's been basing their pattern recognition on these slides, what they're going to be thinking. What on earth are they not showing us? Why are they not talking about it? Like, for instance, competition. Why are you not talking about competition? Are you scared? Are you dumb? You know, it's like you need to be talking about these things. Now, how do we find the market data? Just a quick summary here. How do we get the data for this total available market thing? Well, first of all, don't use your own numbers. Find someone else's numbers that are what we say in German, belastbar. So if McKinsey or Bain or Boston or NATO or the UN or Bundesamt for Statistik, Kramgedöns have actually got some statistics for you, use those. And then you say, they say, not like I say, but they say And you can make those numbers and base arguments on other people's numbers, because that's like untouchable. If you sort of come up with numbers, they're going to be like, yeah, right. If you can say McKinsey says it's going to be the #1 market in 3 years, that's fantastic. Maybe McKinsey pulled it out of their ass. It wouldn't be the first time, but at least it's McKinsey. It's a company. They're sort of respected sometimes. Yeah. So use someone else's numbers. You can usually find them. Sometimes you can buy them. Sometimes you can Google them and magically find them without buying them, I've been told. Anyways, use real data. Use someone else's data. And it's an art form, not really a formula behind it. Now, if you don't know the business model canvas, now is the time to Google it afterwards. And let's just wrap up the complete slides. Now, like I said, competition. You need to have something that talks about your market positioning and your differentiation. If you don't have a slide with competition, most people that are going to be evaluating you for an investment are going to think that you are either scared, stupid, or insane. Or lazy, maybe. Most of the time, I actually see in Germany, there's a lot of people who don't put in competition because they think we don't have any competition. Well, usually the world doesn't work like that, right? There's always some kind of competition. It could be cultural, it could be behavioral, it could be legal, right? Anybody know what the largest competitor to PayPal was? You would think, but it wasn't. It was the US law. It was illegal for digital transactions. Because, of course, the law was old and didn't really think that some sort of newfangled sci-fi thing like that would ever be possible. So it was legal. They used, I think, 300 million or something to just solve that problem of getting the competitor out of the way. Basically, it wasn't the banks that were prohibitive. It was the law. It was the needed to change the law. And also, of course, behaviors. It could be behaviors, how I currently do things, right? Instead of, like, say, you guys, you have a snack bar at an office. Usually, I go outside of the office because I have a lovely sort of, I don't know, what do you call it, restaurant, or you have, like, food trucks, or food stalls, or kiosks, or whatever. And I like it because this is my behavior where I get out of the office every day. And now you're saying I have to stay inside of the office even more because it's already there. That's your competitor right there, right? My behavior. So there's different kinds of competitors. So what we want to do is two things when we talk about competitors. One is to say why we are better or why other competitors or other things in the market are not solving it efficiently or well enough, and why you're different. And of course, if you're in an existing market, here's some ways of doing that. It's up and to the right, unfortunately. It's like cheaper and better. That's it. Resegmented market is basically, okay, we have figured out something that works on the same types of customers that our competition has, but we are having a different kind of value proposition that we don't think that they will be able to follow. That's a resegmentation of an existing market. Then you can use a comparison matrix to position yourself, to show your position, how you've been thinking. Cloned market, of course, if you're cloning something that's been working somewhere else, let's say we found something in Chile, we're going to take it to Germany. What do we need to actually think about first? Well, unit economics is going to be prohibitive because it's cheaper there to operate. Is it going to be taxes? Is it going to be legal ramifications? Are there going to be cultural things that are going to be behavioral, prohibitive? That's something that people do in Chile, but the Germans are not comfortable with. So when you're going to clone a business model or a market, then there's things that you need to talk about what the risks are and how you are mitigating those risks. And of course, where we all want to be in unicorn markets is, of course, when we're creating new markets. And new markets are not created by thin air and pixie dust. It's created by stealing from your competitors or sort of convince other consumers or customers to come to you and consume your goods or services instead of what they already was consuming. So one way of putting, to display a new market is to here, put yourself in the middle, draw sort of leaves around it, and just describe the markets that you think you're going to be getting some more users or revenue from. You can put the key players in there. You can put, if you want to be clever, put their valuation to see, to show the investors, hey, something is happening here. They had a good investment and they had a good evaluation. They have some exits here, there, and whatever. And then also showing, of course, the total available market in each of the markets that you're going to potentially steal something from, which will show the investor a little bit of a lot, a little bit of a lot, a little bit of a lot, a little bit of a lot is credibly probably a lot. So that's how you can actually visualize creating a new market. Milestones. Next slide. When, what, and why. And again, no fucking projections ever. Like Dave McClure said, dear every startup who sends me 3-year revenue projections, if you send me 12-month expense projections, then I might fucking believe you. Hashtag lies. That is to say, every single startup investor knows that an early stage startup have no data to base a projection on, so they shouldn't be projecting. What they do know, and they don't know, basically, is what are you going to do with my money? Show me how and why you're going to burn my money. And when can we have a conversation about the results? For which thing? So like put it on the milestones and tell me what do you need to do to get more growth if that's your thing. What are you going to do with my money? And is that quarter 1, quarter 2? When are we going to have a discussion, a conversation about what happened? You know, don't say, honestly, if you want to be laughed at least internally, because they're very polite sometimes, these investors, but they're going to be laughing inside, if you're going to go the classic, like year 1, we're going to be negative, year 2, we're going to be break even, year 3, we're going to be profitable. It never happened for an early stage startup. Sorry, never going to happen. Don't even go there. They're going to think, oh God, and they're going to laugh behind your back. So, when, what, why? What are you going to do to de-risk, and what are you going to do to create more value?
Who's not asking for it? I mean, I agree with everything you said. As a matter of fact, everybody asking for 5 years.
They should go to the Politburo and ask the communists and how well that worked for them, right? It doesn't work. And also, what a lot of founders misunderstand is that I'm not saying that you should not have some kind of financial model, because we're business people. We're not going to make this on hot fucking air. We're going to have some credible conversations, or some really hard conversations with ourselves and our co-founders about what we need to do, how much shit do we need to sell, how many people do we need to employ to hit our numbers, right? You need to have that too. But that comes in the backup. My opinion, you pull it up and you say, of course, hey, we have some, guys, projection is bullshit, right? But of course, after we've had a long day, I sit down with my co-founders, we have a beer, and then we have a spreadsheet, and we look at it, and we have sort of a goal where we want to go, right? But this is sort of not really how it works, but we have ambitions, and we kind of track ourselves how we're doing, right? But you don't, and this is the big point, you don't misunderstand and put that up as your operating executable plan. That's the point. Now, we should have a conversation about that spreadsheet, about where you want to be going and how you understand your ins and outs of your business at some point. But that's in the backup. Right now, I want to know, why the fuck do you need $500,000 of my money? I don't care about that revenue in day, year fantasy. No serious early stage investor in a startup cares about that shit, because it's impossible. The assumption is that in 8 to 10 years, you maybe be so lucky that you will have a liquidity event, and then I can get my money. And maybe I get a lot of money back. So seriously, no fucking projections. Now, the room that you've been pitching in may or may not be exactly like this one right now. People are sort of, yeah, it's getting late. Someone's been talking a lot. I've been thinking about what I'm going to be eating for dinner. I've been thinking about who I'm going to be golfing with. And, old men. So they're going to sort of fall asleep. So now we need to wrap it all up with a conclusion of basically, if we want to be efficient or lazy, if you want, just make a rehash of all the good bits that we've seen. What can we do? Well, we can put a new spin on the elevator pitch. Right? We can do the elevator pitch again, and then everybody will know exactly the cool things that we've done so far. Okay, cool. Or if you're doing something really important and fantastic for the world, just use that last moment to really push your vision. How beautiful the world is going to look like when you're successful with the investor together, when you can deliver on your vision. Now, the absolute last slide is why are we here? Why we're at the Rhineland pitch, or why we're at pitching an investors. It's about what we're giving and what we're asking in return for it. That is to say, how much money do we think, how little, or what's the minimum we think we need to be able to reach our milestones? And what's the maximum of equity that we're ready, and what's our pain point basically? What's the maximum of revenue? What's the maximum of equity that we are actually have agreed as co-founders to sell of this company? And of course, if you want to be a little bit more advanced and you know what you're talking about, you also may want to be able to present a term sheet. And that term sheet, I recommend it. Make sure that it's simple. Make sure that it's something that is workable. I recommend looking at what Y Combinator and Seedcamp has prepared as legal documents for term sheets. I'd be very skeptical of any investor who would not accept a European Seedcamp term sheet, for instance, or a Y Combinator one. Y Combinator one, yeah, maybe with some modifications because it's American versus European, but let's say the Seedcamp one should be easily acceptable. There's nothing bullshit in there, and it's good for you and it's good for the investor. Because you should just be aware of that just because you get the evaluation you want doesn't mean that you get the terms and conditions you want if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So one thing I always tell everybody here at the Rhineland Pitch, startups and funding rounds is for grown-ups. So if you're going to sign a contract, do so knowingly because you have a lawyer that understands startup contracts. Don't sign anything without understanding because you don't have a startup, like for instance, VSS Redpoint or Osborne Clark or here Auric in Düsseldorf. Have someone who can explain to you in clear text what it is you're signing on to. Because your family lawyer will not know fuck all about what a term sheet would contain, actually contain. So make sure that you bring your own lawyer to the table. Don't get pulled over the table, as they say in Germany. For instance, you can have some nasty stuff into the terms and conditions that you get to your great deal, right? You say, I get 10% for $500,000. That's fantastic. Fantastic valuation. I'm so happy. And then there's something in the term sheet that I signed. It said executive preferential something. And a long story short, I'm not going to get into the legal details, but you signed it, so now it's binding. And then you work 10 years your ass off, right? And then you go public, or you sell your company in 8 years' time. And then the investor comes and tells you, fucking great job, man, you made it. Now let's get paid. And then they're going to go, yeah, I'm just going to give you your money, just hold on, I'm going to just do my executive preferential first. That is to say, let's say it was 10 times, was it? Okay, so we have now 100 million. So I'm going to go like, I'm going to go 1 million for me, 1 million for me, 1 million for me, 1 million for me, oh, 99 million for me, 100 million for me, and oh, sorry, good work, but there's no more money for you, bye-bye, right? So there are all sorts of things that you can get fucked and screwed if you don't know what you're doing. Seedcamp is a seed investment accelerator / fund in Europe.
From seed investment and
CAMP, camp, like in camping with a fireplace and banjo or something. So basically, what this does is it tells a story. If you keep the sort of order of the 13 slides, there's a story in here, basically follows the hero's journey, and if you also remember, be able to tell it like you would to a 6-year-old child, because you're not going to get plus points for being overly complicated. Nobody likes to think, especially not investors. And there is a story in there.